The city was waking up bathed in the soft, golden light of dawn, but for Ravi, the morning felt heavy. He sat on the edge of his bed staring at the floor. Another interview was scheduled for today, and the familiar knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. He felt a deep sense of trepidation, a feeling of fear or agitation about something that may happen. It wasn't that he didn't know English. He had studied it for years. He knew the grammar rules better than he knew the streets of his own city. He could write perfect emails. But the moment he opened his mouth to speak, the words vanished. It felt as if an invisible wall stood between his brain and his lips. Ravi was not alone in this struggle. Across the world, millions share this silent battle. They carry a treasure chest of words but have lost the key to open it. But today, something was going to change. Ravi had decided that he would no longer treat English as a subject to be studied, but as a skill to be trained. He realized that an athlete does not win a race by reading books about running. They win by training their legs. Ravi needed to train his mouth and his mind. Chapter 1. The Morning Monologue. The transformation began the moment he opened his eyes. Usually Ravi's first thoughts were in his native language. He would plan his day, complain about the weather, and think about breakfast, all in his mother tongue. But today he made a choice. He forced his brain to switch gears immediately. As he stood up, he didn't just move, he narrated his actions in his mind. It is 6:30, he thought, actively resisting the urge to translate from his native language. The floor is cold under my feet. I am walking to the window. He did not move his lips, but his inner voice was speaking English. This was his first step, the active inner monologue. It is a long speech made by one person, but in this case, it was happening silently inside his head. He looked out the window. Instead of thinking a simple thought, he pushed himself to add details. The sun is rising slowly over the buildings. The street below is quiet, but soon it will be busy. By doing this, he was telling his brain that English was no longer a foreign guest. It was the resident of his mind. He was rewiring his neural pathways, creating a new default setting. It felt strange, almost exhausting, but he knew that this mental effort was the seed of fluency. Chapter 2. Awakening the Machine. Ravi walked to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. He saw a tired face, but he also saw determination. He realized that his mouth was a physical machine, just like an engine. If the engine is cold and stiff, the car will not drive smoothly. He needed to warm up. Most people ignore this. They try to speak complex sentences with a sleeping mouth. Ravi began his physical training. He opened his mouth wide, stretching his jaw, holding it for 5 seconds, and then closing it. He repeated this, feeling the tension leave his face. He was making his muscles limber, which means flexible and ready to move. Then he worked on his tongue, the most critical tool of speech. He pushed it against his cheeks, circled it around his teeth, and stretched it out. To anyone watching, he might have looked silly, but Ravi knew that he was waking up his articulation tools. Then came the tongue twisters. He started slowly. She sells seashells by the seashore. At first his tongue stumbled. It felt heavy, but he didn't stop. He treated it like a gym workout. He said it again, faster. Red lorry, yellow lorry. He focused on the difficult sounds, forcing his muscles to obey his commands. After 2 minutes, his face felt alive. His lips felt buzzing with energy. He was no longer trying to speak with a dormant or sleeping mouth. He was ready. Chapter 3. The Man in the Mirror. Now came the emotional training. Ravi stood tall in front of the mirror. He looked directly into his own eyes. This was the mirror practice. Usually Ravi practiced English in the safety of his thoughts, where no one could judge him. But speaking is a physical performance. It requires eye contact and presence. He began to talk to his reflection. Today is a big day, he said, watching his own lips move. I am going to the interview, and I am going to be calm. He noticed his face was flat, without expression. So he tried again. He smiled. He used his hands. He infused his voice with energy. I am proud of how hard I am working. He spoke for 5 minutes without stopping. When he couldn't find a specific word, he didn't freeze. He described the idea using other words. He was building resilience, the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. He was teaching himself that it is okay to stumble as long as you keep moving. He became his own audience and his own coach. Chapter 4: The Shadow and the Echo. Before leaving the house, Ravi put on his headphones. He played a podcast featuring a speaker with a clear, strong voice. In the past, he would have just listened passively. But today, he used the shadowing technique. As the speaker spoke, Ravi spoke along with him, almost at the exact same time. He tried to synchronize or coordinate his timing perfectly with the audio. If the speaker paused, Ravi paused. If the speaker's voice went up in excitement, Ravi's voice went up. He wasn't just copying words, he was copying the rhythm, the emotion, and the melody of the language. He was letting the native speaker's flow take over his own, training his brain to accept this rhythm as natural. It was intense focus, but for those few minutes, Ravi sounded fluent because he was borrowing the fluency of another. Chapter 5: Narrating the World. Ravi stepped out into the bustling city streets. The noise of traffic and the rush of people usually overwhelmed him, making him retreat into his shell. But today, he had a mission. He began to describe his day in real time. This was the technique of real-time description. He whispered to himself as he walked. "I am walking to the bus stop. The air is humid today. That man is running to catch a taxi." He described the mundane or ordinary and dull things around him. "The bus is red. The driver looks impatient." By doing this, he was bridging the gap between his life and the English language. He was proving to himself that English belonged in the streets, in the bus, and in the chaos of life, not just in a classroom. He realized he was hungry. Instead of just thinking hungry, he expanded the thought. "My stomach is empty. I should have eaten a larger breakfast. I can smell fresh bread from that bakery." He was flooding his brain with English input generated by his own mind. Chapter 6: The Art of Slowness and Clusters. He arrived at the office building for his interview. His heart began to race. The old instinct to speak fast, to rush through his sentences so he wouldn't be interrupted, bubbled up. But he remembered the golden rule: clarity over speed. He took a deep breath. He reminded himself that powerful people speak slowly. They are deliberate, meaning they do things carefully and on purpose. He entered the room. The interviewer asked him, "Tell me about yourself." Ravi didn't rush. He didn't stutter through single words like, "I am hard worker." Instead, he used phrase clusters, groups of words that naturally stick together. He didn't say, "I don't know yet." He said, "I'm not entirely sure at the moment." He didn't say, "Yes," he said, "That sounds like a great plan." He spoke in a cohesive manner, meaning his thoughts stuck together logically. "To be honest," he began, using a smooth starter phrase, "I have always been passionate about this industry." He took his time. He enunciated every syllable. By slowing down, he gave his brain time to find the right words, and he gave his mouth time to form them perfectly. Chapter 7: The Storyteller's Power. The interviewer asked a difficult question. "Tell me about a time you failed." This was the moment to use the storytelling technique. Ravi didn't just give a dry fact. He painted a picture. He remembered his practice. He structured his answer like a small movie. 2 years ago, Ravi started, setting the scene. "I was working on a project that meant a lot to me." He described the emotion, not just the event. "I felt incredibly disappointed when we missed the deadline." He spoke about the struggle and the resolution. He wasn't just reporting data, he was sharing a human experience. Because he was focusing on the story and the emotion, his fear of grammar disappeared. The flow took over. He saw the interviewer lean in. They weren't counting his grammar mistakes. They were listening to his story. Ravi realized that fluency is not about being a dictionary. It is about connection. It is about being articulate, which means having the ability to speak fluently and coherently. Conclusion: the new lifestyle. Ravi walked out of the building. He didn't know yet if he got the job, but he knew he had gained something far more valuable. He had broken the silence. He realized that the secret to English was never about buying more books or watching more videos passively. It was about training. He understood now that his brain and his mouth were muscles that needed daily exercise. He had to wake up in English, warm up his mouth like an athlete, face himself in the mirror, shadow the masters, and narrate his own life story every single day. It wasn't magic. It was consistency. As he walked home, Ravi looked up at the sky. He took a deep breath and thought, "This is not the end of my learning. This is the beginning of my living." He had transformed from a student of English into a speaker of English, and that is the journey we must all take. The obstacles or things blocking your way are only in your mind. If you train your voice, the world will listen. Remember, you are not defined by the mistakes you make, but by the courage you show in speaking despite them. Start your training today. Make your life your classroom. And never, ever let your voice be silent again.